As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
One of the worst performances of my career, and they never doubted it for a second.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble.
You just gotta keep living, man. Livin.
Son of a bitch. He stole my life.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Welcome back to the Shot by Shot podcast, where today we're talking all things 2025 horror, which has delivered some of the highs of the year and some of the very low lows of the year as well. But we're going to focus on the biggest release this month, which is Zach Cregger's second feature film, Weapons, which is one of the most successful original films of the year. I think it just passed 100 million, so it's one of the most successful films of the year, I'd say, especially in horror, even though they all do well. But we're going to talk about Weapons and just the state of what we think about horrors in 2025. So, Oscar, you start us off. What did you think about Weapons?
It's an interesting film. I feel like so many horror films this year and this decade are just centered around their marketing. Like, which studio can have like the strongest marketing pull that is really devoid of anything to do with the film, and like drops like little teasers, kind of cryptic in a sense. And I felt it with Long Legs last year, and I was really disappointed with that film, so I don't think it's very good. And I kind of feel like this one falls into the same trap. Barbarian's an interesting film. I think kind of there's shock value is kind of one of the biggest killers in a lot of horror films nowadays, and I feel like Barbarian kind of slightly fell into that trap as it went on. And that film has a really interesting tonal shift to it, and Weapons in a sense is it treats its kind of commentary with purposely with little care and kind of a comedic tone, and I just don't think any of it ever really lands at all, and it kind of places comedic relief on top of kind of the concept of like evils in plain sight, which I think is what the kind of whole synopsis of that film is centered around, and this kind of suburban environment, which is so often the center of a lot of kind of hellish, this slightly dystopian imagery, just not dystopian like a far dystopian, but in the sense that everything looks the same, particularly in America, and I guess over here in a sense. But yeah, Cregger's an interesting director. I don't know, and these kinds of horror films gaining a lot of traction online, and like I said, the marketing is a lot of that, and we get the kind of usual like reviews that sound like people want to be on posters and quoted on trailers, and I feel like this film is kind of feeding that in a way. But the most disappointing thing about this film is how deeply uninteresting I found it, and I really don't think it uses its non-linear narrative that well at all, and I don't think it's really that effective. But yeah, horror in general is, I think it's been a pretty horrendous year, to be honest. Like so many of my kind of Bond films this year are horror. That's kind of the domination of the genre down there. There has been some standouts, but nothing kind of massive in a sense. But yeah, I found this to be disappointing, but I guess need to start tempering my expectations for these kind of gimmicky marketing horror films now, because they aren't what they seem.
I thought it was quite refreshing. I saw this I think a day after seeing Bring It Back in cinemas, and I'm so fed up of like the grief-driven horror trend that we've got, and so to have a film be about something strange occurring and just embracing that, and then exploring the impact it has on this community, through all the different characters. I think it's a refreshing change to a pretty weak decade in general. Like, there's some very high highs for horror this decade. I mean, the best film of this year, I still think is Sinners, which is a horror, but I think things like the cult horror that's trending with like Opal and things like that, and then the grief horror as well. Weapons and in another way, Long Legs. I really enjoyed both. I think Craig is maybe getting criticised a little too much for the reception this has got from the marketing. I don't know how involved he was in the marketing, but unlike Long Legs, where the Long Legs marketing felt slightly more disingenuous, I think this one always had a little strange, goofy side to the trailers, and within the first like 5 minutes, it embraces that. You know, the soundtrack playing as all the kids run out the house. This is played nowhere near as straight as something like Long Legs. It's similar to Barbarian, where there's constantly a comedic undertone to it all. And I think the structure is an interesting way to do this. Slightly rushed at revealing everything. I think there's like no ambiguity by the final act. You sort of know what's going to happen, but then instead of doing like a typical twist horror ending, it instead goes like fully embracing the silliness of it all. And I think a lot of people enjoyed the ending. I know I did. I think that was a very cathartic way to end the film, and it felt like it was all leading up to it. Um, and then yeah, I think it looks good. There's a lot of handheld camera work. You know, kids running at the end running through windows and stuff. Um, it's a very frenzied film with jump scares and things like that. But I think it all works together, and it didn't at any point feel like Oscar said about Barbarian. I don't think it tried to be too shocking. There is violence in this, but I think when it's there, it's used sparingly and it is effective. So not the best horror this year that I've seen, but it's up there. It's probably like third best horror I've seen this year.
I agree. I think I really enjoyed this. It's interesting that people didn't expect this to be comedic. I know the trailers were a bit long legsy, I guess, with the tone they were going for, but Zach Kreger already showed that he was willing to kind of blend tone in a weird and unique way. So I really wasn't. I was a bit thrown off by some moments, like at the start, like you're saying, there's a needle drop rather than like maybe like someone else could have made it really creepy with a score or something like that. But I think in general, it was a good blend of his comedy that it doesn't go straight into like a comedy horror. And I think there's a lot of interesting like talks about this movie, about the way that it uses its like thematics, where it isn't necessarily like thrown in your face or all about like one theme. And I think if anything, I would describe this movie as just like telling a good story, which I don't think a lot of horror does. Especially this year, just that didn't do a good job of doing that as a base to their film. There's a lot of movies like Together or Bring Her Back, like we're talking about, where you can see their influences from more modern horror directors like Aster and Peele. And I think the film doesn't really go any further than taking the stuff from those films and trying to use them in theirs. Whereas this one's like Carpenter, there's some Aster in there as well, but it's not used egregiously like I do like other modern horror movies. His influences all over there. It's got PTA and Magnolia and all the stuff that he's like marketed this movie almost with, but it still feels very original. It's just a very well told story, I think, from someone that I think is a good up and coming horror director. I don't think he's like the master of the next master of horror, like he's being told on Twitter or other social media. And I don't quite love this movie quite as other people are thinking. It's like some of the best of the decade for some people, but I did really enjoy just what he was doing in this movie. And I think it's more one that I've still been thinking about. Is stuck with me, even if it's not like the strongest thematic movie straight away when you're watching it. Like I think this is a very personal movie. There's a lot more there that isn't necessarily just thrown in your face.
Yeah, I think people didn't do it service by like calling this book on like a Magnolia like horror epic, which is absolutely not the case. It like people as soon as people hear like this kind of when we have like multiple perspectives like polyphonic voices or whatever, and it's like slightly non-linear. People are like, oh, Magnolia instantly, and that's the only thing people represent it with, and it's such a like a thrown out there comparison that is just so disingenuous to what this film's trying to do, even though I don't think it's very good. I think it's this film much closely aligned to Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Cure. This kind of centers around the idea of like contained violence and people kind of not being what they seem to be, and this kind of distrust between suburban citizens. And out of this is a spoiler for ending, but I'm sure we're going into spoilers, whatever. But the best gag in the film is when Josh Brolin's walking through that house at the end, and the random lady just screams and says, "There's a man walking through our house," and that's like the the best bit of comedic relief in the film, because that's about the only bit where I could actually tell that Craig was trying to actually do something with what he was presenting, because I think there's so many ideas in this film, and a lot of them are just kind of random gestures to ideas rather than trying to pick apart anything or dig deeper, and he really doesn't seem interested in doing that for the majority of this film. You know, we kind of get bits on like drug dealing and cop corruption and things like that, and coincidence as well, and we're moving past these so quickly. It's like, here's an image of this, like the random shot of like the AR on top of the house in the dream and the clock on it, like like here's this, and we're not going to do anything with it ever again in the entire film. And it in some ways, I'm not saying that kind of approach to your ideas isn't a totally bad thing across like any film, but I really don't think it works well here, especially when I know like people thought this was hilarious. I don't know, I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was that funny, and like when the new drop started at the beginning, I was like, so this is where we're going, and I don't know, scratching my head. And I guess it's clever in the marketing, because like we get this narration from this kid who which kid is it? Do we even know?
It's just a random girl, is it?
Yeah,
It's just a random kid.
Mm.
And they use like sound bites of it in the trailer, but they pick out the bits that sound really they don't include the bits that sound really stupid, so like they're just picking out the serious bits. And yeah, the non-linear thing is interesting. I didn't feel that Kreger did much with it, other than it's like this slow reveal of information. And it's like we're taking ages to get somewhere, which I can already see where we're going in a sense. And I feel like he could have utilized the concept of perspective between each of the characters so much better than just being a slow reveal of information for the audience. And I really felt that's where it kind of gets bogged down a bit. That it's just genuinely without the kind of non-linear stuff. This would be one of the most boring horror films I've ever seen. Like, I think it adds a bit of a slight intrigue, but like the actual narrative itself in a linear sense is so dull. And it's just not enough. And we kind of get to a point where he's trying to mask this comedic relief over the fact that I think this film is fairly superficial and pretty hollow. But yeah, I think maybe that's just me.
Well, the film is like by no means hilarious, like you said. I think Josh Brolin's the best character in this film. I think Austin Abrams maybe gives the best performance, but I think the best character is Josh Brolin's character within the actual story. And it's interesting that was going to be Pedro Pascal, because he's the least believable, like, implied conservative dad you probably ever see. Josh Brolin's so believable in this role as like a guy with a bully for a son,
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, Josh Brolin has some really funny line deliveries. that after his dream where he like wakes up and shouts "What the fuck" is
That
a really,
that
like,
that
really
that was the
good
set.
scene.
That okay. That maybe 2 lines got a laugh out of me. That was quite funny.
And then when he's
Um,
in the house at the end, and Austin Abrams just will not, or is it Alden Ehrenreich? One of them will just not stay on the floor when he's throwing him around. That's the funny
yeah,
part.
that was really
Oh,
funny.
what is it? Is it the was it the junkie?
Yeah, so I think that's Austin
Yeah.
Abrams. Yeah, it's like that is like frustration. The way he delivers his lines is really funny. I had a little bit of an issue with the like police officer and junkie storyline. I think it really doesn't add particularly much. Alden Ehrenreich's good in it, but his character feels slightly out of place, I think, within the storyline. I guess it's to give Julia Garner more character development, but that whole junkie, the fact you get a whole segment dedicated to him and then the junkie straight after, I don't think we needed to see like the two perspectives of like him being chased around the city and stuff. But Austin Abrams is very good in this, and not someone I was that familiar with, to be honest. I know he's in Walking Dead, but I've never seen that. Other criticisms I have is I do wish it went a little bit darker. 'Cause like you said, the needle drop at the beginning immediately establishes this really creepy, unique idea and kind of makes it fairy tale like in too much of a
Well, it's like
blatant way.
Magnolia reference to the
Yeah,
moment in Magnolia.
like the
Not to
idea of
spoil it.
a town losing a classroom full of kids, and it's not. Another criticism I had in my review is it doesn't really explore the impact properly as on the community, and I wish it did a little more. You see, Josh Brolin is like really angered by it all, and there is that scene in the like school meeting. But aside from that, I don't feel like this suburban area is like an actual living, breathing place. So yeah, I wish he took itself a little bit more seriously, but I think Craig's MO is to go for dark concepts but be playful with them. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's a trend will continue or not, but Resident Evil, I would imagine if that's his next project, I'd be shocked if there's much comedy in that from what I know of that franchise.
Well, he said it's Evil Dead 2. I know he said it with the camera, but
All right. If it's like
maybe
Evil
it'll be
Dead
a
2,
comedy.
that's gonna be weird. The reception to that might not be great if it's Resident Evil, but we'll see.
It's a weird one because I think it does depend on whether you just enjoy sitting with the characters in these sections where it goes on to their own. Um, and I don't generally like dislike that, even if you know where the movie's going. It kind of felt like Pulp Fiction in a way where you're kind of jumping back and forth and you know where it's gonna go, but you kind of just sit like sitting with the characters. Um, it sounded similar to Tarantino's like kind of thought process when he's writing a movie as well. Like he didn't know where the story was gonna go. He was kind of just writing it as he was going along and like seeing where the characters took him. The way he was like describing how he wrote the movie reminded me of the way Tarantino talks about the way he writes his scripts. But yeah, the structure really didn't bother me. I think it was really effective at like kind of making you care about the characters. But then the main problem I would say with that is that he kind of just disposes them in the third act, right at the end, like the Austin Abrams and the cop character, they kind of just die randomly.
Yeah, I think this film tries to push back against like elevated concepts that have kind of plagued a lot of horror films. Trying to subdue like grief and stuff, like internally in a way that you don't want to come to terms with yourself and who you are. But it does dump all of that, well, all the little it had going for it with this kind of like third act crazies, which um, yeah, it really didn't stick for me. And you were talking about inevitability. I think inevitability is a really interesting concept to grapple with in kind of the non-linear, but I think that is giving too much praise to Kreger because I think this is more predictability rather than inevitability. He doesn't. There's not enough to there to kind of show that that's what he was actually going for, rather than something that like I can see where it's going. this is more predictable, rather than like we're actually going to signal where this is going and use that end point as something to transform the narrative before it, which I don't think he does very well. And I there's just too much vagueness in this film, and yeah. What was I going to say? There's someone I was going to say. Oh yeah, I don't think Craig trusts his audience that well, and I think he does too much of the telling with this kind of non-linear narrative ploy. There's a lot of directness. We have to inevitably see everything and anything that happens, and I almost feel like he lets it loose too quickly, and then the kind of what's going on, and then by the time you think you should be getting somewhere, we're kind of already there, and there's not really anything, and it kind of trundles to an end. And a kind of interesting final line, I guess, about kids not speaking. I think that's what it was anyway. But yeah, interesting reveal though that Josh Brolin's kid being a bully, which is I think is slightly one of the more interesting ideas in the film. This is built up that it's a kid at the end of the day, and he's kind of mourning him and wants him back so badly, and it turns out he's an absolute moron. Yeah, but I don't know, and I think the trailers spoil so much of the film looking back, which seems to be a trend nowadays.
What does it spoil? Thingy's not even in the trailers, is she? Like Gladys.
Yeah, she is.
Is she? I don't remember.
Yeah. So that you like it's weird because like you see it and you don't know it's spoiling anything, but it's like it's out of context spoilers in a way. Like all of the kind of like big shocking moments I would say in the film, like you see briefly when the one when he's getting the one when what's his name, the teacher,
She's on the ceiling.
no, who the principal,
Benedict Wong.
Oh, Benedict Wong.
Benedict Wong's character, him getting thrown up on. You see like the parents stabbing themselves with the forks, and you see a shot of you can't tell really, you can't make it out what it is, but you see the shot at the end of Gladys's face with like all the kids' hands all over it, and all the kids running out of the house as well. So I think it does, but it doesn't really. When you see it, like it doesn't add up to anything. So it's not the kind of it actually spoils. But looking back on it, it does actually show everything in a sense, for the most part. But yeah, it is. Yeah, it's interesting.
The one thing I'd criticize the trailers for is the Benedict Wong stuff, because that's like some of the most effective imagery when he's running around with his like forehead caved in and his eyes bulging. And they were really pushing that scene hard, which I get. It's going to get people to go and see it, but that was like the most viscerally like disturbing parts of the film. I'm a little bit shocked how loved this Gladys antagonist is on Twitter, and they're already talking about doing like a prequel for a character to like.
Oh no! I've said it once, and this obsession with closure needs to stop. This like the ending explain culture has ruined ambiguity.
So
It is ruined.
Well, the actual movie's like the opposite of that, isn't it? It really explains nothing about her.
Yeah, no, she just appears, and you don't even know if she actually is their relative or if she's just infiltrated the family. I don't even think they explained that. She's supposed to be the Anne, isn't she?
Yeah.
So
But then she's supposed to be like hundreds of years old, or people think she is.
But the ambiguity is if she is just a witch who is the sister, or if the witch has like taken over this person.
Yeah, I think like, for me, I don't know about what you guys found the scary scene, but I think the one scene that scared me the most was when the junkie's walking through the forest and he sees her like in the forest. I'm like, yeah, no, and like the makeup she's wearing is pretty creepy. Like it's like clown-esque, in a sense. But yeah, I thought that was the creepiest part of the film. And when I don't know who, but when Julia Garner's character's like camping outside the house and like someone gets into the car and like cuts her hair.
It's the mother, yeah. It's really
Mother, but
creepy
like
the way she walks over.
the way she walks is quite creepy. But yeah, outside of that, I wasn't not doing a lot in that sense.
Yeah, it has some scares. That I wish it was a little bit more focused on like the mother scene when she's walking with the scissors. It does spam the jump scares a little bit in the dream sequences, but
Oh yeah, they do.
she is creepy looking, to be fair, with all the makeup and stuff. Yeah, it's not the scariest film ever, but I was so relieved, like I said, a day after seeing Bring Her Back to not just be watching like gratuitous, drawn out, violent scenes that were just. I had a giant
Yeah.
I had a giant milkshake, and it was just making me feel ill. To be honest. Yeah, so I was just happy that we were getting like classic scares and not, oh, this is disgusting looking.
Yeah, I agree to a degree, but I think the third act kind of caves into that in a sense, and I don't think it for a lot of it. I kind of want something behind that, and Kreger almost goes too far and tries to put too much on everything, and we're left with so many vague concepts that are just loosely attached to images and ideas that by the end just kind of fall apart. But I guess I know I've seen some people trying to say this like it's a critique on the idea of like elevated horror and having this um, uh, meaning to everything that is presented. But I still think it as narratively it is fairly uninteresting. But as horror films go, right now I've got horror films that I have below a 3 this year. I've got Final Destination Bloodlines. I've got The Gorge, kind of a horror. Weapons, Opus, Wolfman, Ash, um, Until Dawn, The Monkey, Death of a Unicorn, and Bring Her Back, which we will get onto, which is pretty horrendous. And the horror films I've liked this year are Presence is not really a horror film. 28 years later, Women in the Yard, Sinners, and that's probably about it. Even though April is probably the film that's scared me the most this year. But yeah, Bring Her Back is the horror film that just caves into the all of the worst tendencies of 2020's horror that you can imagine. And I know some people are saying that they were surprised that they thought like the ultra violence in this film was really interesting, and they thought it was unique in a sense that flipped this idea of grief on its head. But I completely disagree. There is not a single thought behind any image in this film other than shock value. I I wrote my one line in Letterboxd reviews. I just said this was single use plastic cinema, and it is. And this just furthers that kind of um, when I was talking about people reviewing horror films to try and get on marketing things, and I think this film in a way feels like it's built for that. It's just like here's like it's so disturbing. Like people just put out words, and this film feels like an embodiment of that in a sense that we're just going to throw out descriptions and have no meaning behind it at all. And if this, it just feels like it's feeding off this film, and Talk to Me, I think, is interesting. It has some interesting ideas, but I don't think it does a lot with them. And grief is just tiring. And this film is like, oh, here's grief, but we're not going to do anything with it. It's just completely straight lined. Here's a mother who misses her child. Here's a kid jamming a knife into his mouth. Here's more gory imagery, and it is completely and utterly pointless.
It was such like a regression from Talk to Me. I don't think Talk to Me is amazing, but I did like it. This plays out like their old YouTube videos, which is what they got popular from, where it'd be like
Mm.
Ronald McDonald running around a children's playground with a chainsaw. That is the sort of video they do, like hyper gory, like shock value videos, which is like charming on YouTube and funny because it's like YouTube. And the fact that we're allowed to like post stuff like that, there's no problem with that. But this, for a film with such visceral, like gory imagery, I felt absolutely nothing during it or after it. Like I left the cinema, and I think I just forgot about it. I think I was thinking about the film I'd seen the night before. Um, I just think there is genuine talent behind the camera. They have a good eye for horror every now and then. I think the television stuff when she's watching it on TV, that's really I think that's really effective looking horror. How grainy and gritty it looks. It reminds me of the hell scene from Talk to Me, which I thought was one of the better scenes in that film. I just think it's safe and boring, going like down the grief horror route, and they really waste like a really good performance from Sally Hawkins because at the end they try and like rationalize the character's actions and try and make you feel bad for her, but she's like acting like Hitler in this film effectively. She's an awful human, and when they're doing like the soppy needle drop at the end, crying over a daughter's body, I was like, this is just ridiculous. Really ridiculous. It's just it's basically just misery porn. With I'll say it, not much to say. To be honest.
It is true. It doesn't have much to
It's
say at all.
true. I think it's kind of crazy that you spent your entire film being this like shock value, terrible shock value, only to make your film even worse by just dumping that in the last scene and make it this like really overly emotional nonsense, which is hysterical.
Yeah, I was just really disappointed with it. I really like Talk to Me, which isn't like revolutionary in a sense in its style. Like it's like taking from a lot of other like modern horror stuff, like It Follows and just a couple other descendants of that one. But it's a really fun movie. Like the concept is really fun. Like the hand that connects you with demons. Like the concept to begin with is just fun. This one is just like pretty much any other horror movie. There's like four other horror movies this year, which it has like the basic outline of people go to a new location or new house, and there's some conspiracy going on around them, and then there's just random silly stuff in there that makes like no sense. Like Together, Opus, um, Until Dawn, I guess, in a bit. That's like taking from other stuff. But there's so many like modern horror movies that are just blatantly taking stuff from Aster and Peel, and it's not the good stuff. It's just the most basic outline of story that they just take, and I'm so
Mm.
bored of it. It's just a boring movie overall. Pretty much,
It,
that was like the
it's
worst aspect of it. I was
yeah,
bored.
Mm.
it's so
Yeah.
boring. It's such a
Mm.
cyclical like. Oh, the brother pisses. It looks like the brother's pissed himself. I'm gonna frame the brother, and then oh, the brother. I'm gonna punch his brother's sister and blame it on him. It's so there's nothing happen. It's so boring to watch. And it just like deepens and deepens all the misery. That poor kid. I was like laughing at the way it looks. I felt sorry for the actor.
It's
More
so
like
funny. Yeah, I don't
expecting
think
And
it was
then
intentional that it was funny. I kept laughing at him.
in between all that, we're gonna have him eat a knife and eat some wood and eat anything he can find.
the eat and eye stuff is genuinely vile, but like it just felt like what is the point in this? And then when he's eating the table, I'm like, oh come on, we've got to do like two in one film. It's also like a double whammy because it's possession horror, and that's something people just
Mm.
can't do. I don't think anyone's really got it even near the level of Exorcist, which sort of popularized it, which is a high bar, but the recent trend of possession and grief horror mixed together is pretty rancid in this. That's how I describe this film, to be honest. It's rancid, just a rancid film.
My problem with not just horror films, but films in general, between this film, Weapons, even Superman, I think there's the to being provocative is so easy, that I think it's almost a lost art to be provocative and to it to be effective. There's so much kind of ways it's cheaply conveyed now, and my problem with vague themes is that it studios seem to be doing it because it's such a popular thing that audiences can just project their own personal feelings onto such vague ideas. Like, here is like Weapons, like here's like a really and Superman, here's a really vague and signifier, an empty idea of happiness, just the single concept of it, or I don't know, contained rage, and audience are like, oh yeah, I can just take what I think and put that onto there. And I think there's so many of these films that just fall into that trap now, of doing that, and it's so cheap, but it's such an effective audience hit. And I just think so much is going wrong, in a sense that there's um it's not even ambiguous. It's just we're just going to place an idea into the audience's head, and we're going to let them do everything else. We're not going to be specific, and we're not going to try and challenge the audience. We're going to let their mind run wild, and the audience will not even be interested in digging deeper into just a concept in general. And I think that's what so many films are just studios are doing now. They've seen the audiences just comfortable with the idea of familiarity with an emotion or a theme, and that's just what they're running with. And I think it's killing so many films.
That
But
is an issue with
uh,
this film. There's just
but
no. Sorry, Karen.
but at the same time, it's terrible. But studios are seeing that that's just what people are wanting, and audiences are just. I don't mean to be sound maybe slightly pretentious in a way, but I just think that's what audiences are just falling for very easily. And not that I'm trying to sound superior in a way, but I just think that is kind of what's happening, and is becoming a trend of yeah, just superficial ideas, and yeah, it kind of sucks.
That is an issue with this film and why it's so boring. There's like no everything you see. There's no mystery to it. It's all explained to you. It's all really
Hmm.
straightforward. And then she's
Hmm.
watching like a YouTube video tutorial on how to possess someone basically, and all she has to do is go like that with a circle, and
Hmm.
it's just so stupid. It's such a
Hmm.
it's one of the most boring films I've seen this year, and for
Hmm.
someone like those two directors to follow on from Talk to Me, which is like I think the provocativeness of it does work. I don't like it as much as a lot of people, but
Mm.
our opinion of this film isn't the consensus. It's got quite a good reception, and I do think why wouldn't you as new directors carry on being this sort of provocative when people are
Hmm.
eating it up?
Hmm.
Which is why I'm a bit concerned about whatever they do next, to be honest.
They're doing a Talk to Me sequel,
Oh yeah, so yeah, it'll probably be just the same again.
and yeah, there's just I kind of it's in a way that I like a little more. I want maybe a director to be a bit more specific with their ideas, and uh, studios have seen now that audiences don't necessarily like ambiguity, and we've kind of lost the art of that in a way, and they just want to be fed ideas, that they can that they're already familiar with and are not willing to explore in a wider context. And yeah, this just studio filmmaking is just so vague now. And I know this isn't even studio filmmaking. Bring Her Back. It's or actually, or is it? Did they actually do this with
Directed by
A24?
A24.
I know it was A24. But did they actually produce it as well, or is
I think
this one
they
where
probably
they?
did because they
Mm,
picked up Talk to Me, so they probably produced this.
yes, yeah,
They didn't,
yeah. That's
according to
interesting.
they didn't produce it according to the letterbox.
Did they not? Oh, okay.
Interesting. So this is one that they made and then A24 picked up later. So in a sense, I still think this falls under the trap of what I'm saying, just not necessarily the studio, but Weapons and Superman absolutely fall under that trap, and it's not something that is just specific to horror. It's just I just think it's a massive problem nowadays with so many of the bigger hits.
They were originally going to do a Street Fighter film, but they dropped it for this instead.
Mm,
I think that is something they should look at doing. They should go for something where they can use all this energy they've got, put all this like stupid stuff, and put it into something that is hyper. Well, Street Fighter's violent, but not in the same way as like a horror film. Put it into something like that and see what happens. Because I don't want them to fall into the horror trap, especially doing Talk to Me too, where you get like grief horror and then violence. Because this is going to be like 3 in a row where it's just the same thing again. So hopefully,
mm.
because they're young, they because I don't want to like give up on them yet. Hopefully, they spread out a little bit.
Yeah, I think that going on from what I've said about filmmakers being unspecific, I think another one for me is kind of Emerald Fennell in a way. There's so many filmmakers now are kind of embracing this kind of style of filmmaking. It's all just, oh, what does it all mean? It's like we're going to just do loads of suggestive imagery that is not ambiguous in a way that's challenging, but is just completely empty and devoid of any meaning or at all. But we're just going to be suggestive because we think it's cool and we can. And I think Craig kind of does this in Weapons, and I think Emerald Fennell is someone who's just done it across Saltburn and I Promising You a Young Woman as well. And from what I've been hearing, it's the same with Wuthering Heights. And I was just reading some reviews on Weapons, and people were just like these. This film is like made for bad YouTube channels, so they can just stick on thumbnails like, "Oh, what does this all mean?" or like, "Oh, ending explained," and things like that, like New Rock Stars or whatever. In a sense, it kind of does feel like that. I know that isn't directly his intentions, but it does genuinely feel like that there is a wave of filmmaking that is intentionally trying to do that. But I don't. Yeah, this unspecificity is killing so much of the kind of um perceptive and like literary landscape of how we engage with film and themes, and I think it's kind of killing off so much of film criticism in a sense.
I think together that none of you have seen, right? I think that
No.
falls into the trap of like very blatantly just like pushing this one theme that is obvious from the go, and you could probably
Mm,
guess everything that that film has to say. Just off the bat. And it does do that thing where it's like it laces like small little clues into this conspiracy that's happening all around that you can like do the ending explain stuff to it. What you just said there kind of did make me kind of think of together. It's again, it's kind of taking from Aster and yeah, pretty much just Aster and the
mm.
conspiracy around the one location that is like this hint on a wall or a symbol somewhere, and it's like
And and it just
really
does
like
nothing with
one
it.
note. Yeah, it's like they take all the wrong stuff from the great films and they just do these really one note things with them.
It annoys me, like suggestive imagery it does my brain in, like especially contemporary. Like I said, we've lost the art of proper ambiguity that's actually doing something. Mm, filmmakers just um think of it as kind of a cheap tool for, I guess, trying to work people's minds, but it's just working them in a loop of nothing.
Yeah. I hate this whole idea that elevated horror even exists. As if like
It
before
doesn't.
2015, like films didn't have anything going on with them.
Mm.
Saying elevated is like a really bad like showcase of how horror is at the minute. 'Cause it's basically just recognizing how repetitive a lot of films are. I could have seen Together yesterday, but instead I watched like a studio sequel film. I watched Nobody 2, just because I'm just fed up. It's August and I'm fed up of just
Ah.
watching like this sort of horror all the time. I knew Together would be at best like a 3 out of 5.
Hmm.
And yeah, so instead I decided to watch a studio sequel.
It does feel
I
weird though. Like there's been so much horror this year, like consistently.
It is
I know
very
that
heavy,
it's
and to
always
be
like kind
fair,
of
it's like four of my, if you count presents, 4 of my top 5 are horror, but the majority of it looks really bad, and I have been avoiding it. I haven't seen like most of the films Oscar listed earlier, like not seen Death of a Unicorn or Opal or Until Dawn, just because I can't be bothered, because I don't see the point.
Yeah. I'm surprised you of all people went to see an action film, like an all-out action film,
To be fair,
and
I
didn't
saw
hate it.
Nobody like last month, like at home, and I thought it was all right. And Nobody 2 is basically the same thing. So it's not like awful, but I've got a docket points for just doing the same gimmick again, and they're gonna make like 6 of them things. I'm pretty sure.
Timo, the director, I really like him. It's like his direction is like his action is always really interesting to see, and he seems like such a chill guy. He directed Nobody too. Yeah, but is the direction actually interesting? The action direction in that
The
film.
the set pieces are much better than the first film, I'd say, 'cause it takes place in like a theme park at the end, and they
Mm.
like Home Alone booby trap it. It's pretty funny. But like I said, my issue is it's just the first film again. So
Mm.
I am naturally going to dot points for it just being the first film again. If they
Mhm.
swapped it round, nobody's plot was in Nobody 2. I'd like Nobody 2 more, but I just after seeing Nobody last month and seeing basically the same film again, and also they keep telling you like Sharon Stone as the villain is like really threatening, but then I won't spoil it, but an issue both films have is that um, he's so. It's like John Wick. He's so invincible, but to a ridiculous degree. You never actually feel like he's
What
being
plot
threatened.
armor?
Not so much plot armor, just the character in that universe himself is first of all like the ultimate like killer, like John Wick.
Mm.
So you and because it's unlike John Wick where it's more serious because it's light-hearted. There's not much
Mm.
tension, even though the scenes are like
Mm.
fun to watch. But
Mm.
I do think they're gonna crank a lot of those out, probably 5 or 6. But I think they might just change directors every now and then. It's not awful, but
Mm.
it's not. It's not like a film I'm gonna remember.
low budget action does kind of have the same problem with horror, whereas John Wick's ruined like the whole genre because it's just John Wick ripoffs.
Yeah, this is aware of that though, because it's such a blatant parody of it.
Yeah.
He even like has a dog in this film. It, yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to see what Gregor does next. That Resident Evil movie sounds they're really fun. I know he's
I
got a
agree.
couple of other scripts as well that he'd wrote. This was wrote um before his first film even came out, and I think that he already wrote the Resident Evil movie and something else as well.
I do think we're
Mm.
gonna get another Weapons installment from
Oh
what I've heard.
man.
But Resident Evil is my favorite game series, so if he pulls that off, I'll be very happy. And I'm actually not upset that he's got control over that. I think from what he's been saying, he understands that franchise. Um, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, he said it was a film that he would make even if he didn't have the IP for it,
Yeah,
which is a bonus on top. So I like the sound of that.
yeah.
But it comes out next year, doesn't it?
No, he's not shot it yet. Well,
Yeah.
maybe it does come out next year, but
I swear it's wrapped filming.
has it?
We didn't even know who was in it, do we?
Yeah, we
It's
do.
Austin Abrams
Oh,
is the
Austin
lead.
Abrams. Is
Austin
that it then?
Abrams, yeah. Pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it comes out next year.
It's just Austin
Uh,
Abrams so far.
I swear it's either started or finished, but I know. Yeah, it comes out September next year.
One of the writers did John Wick 3 and 4, which is interesting. So I'm excited for that. I like that he's not adapting the game because we've seen all that. We don't need like a pure adaptation.
No. Okay, that's our thoughts on weapons and a lot of the horror movies that came out this year. Let us know in the comments what your favourite horror movie this year is so far and what you thought about weapons. And we'll be back next week for Ari Aster's fourth feature film in Eddington. See you.